Hi guys! Muli ay salamat sa inyong patuloy na pagsubaybay sa ating ginagawang discussion about statics of rigid bodies. We will be discussing today about the determination of the resultant of parallel forces in space. Kaya kung hindi ka pa nakapag-subscribe guys sa aking channel, I am inviting you once again to subscribe to this channel by clicking the subscribe button below or share this channel to your friends so that they would also be informed of this presentation. Okay guys, puntahan natin itong ating discussion. Okay, ang problem natin is this one. Replace the system of forces acting on the plate assumed by a single force that will produce the same effect. So you would notice, you would see on the illustration that there is a plate having the given dimension, which are subjected to 4 different forces located at different points. Okay. In this particular case, I'd like you to be familiar and observe the orientation of the XYZ axis. Maaaring kung ibang libro ang ginagamit natin, ay iba ang orientation ng ating XYZ axis. And in this particular case, you would see how they are oriented. Maaaring tanong nyo na, yung bang orientation na nauna kong na-encounter using other books, ay iba ba sa orientation na ngayon ay tatalakayin natin? So get to guys, ang orientation ng XYZ axis sa isang force system in space ay iisa lang yan. Pare-pareho lamang siyang orientation, gumagamit sila ng tinatawag nating right-hand thumb principle. Simple lang ang paggamit ko. So you have this right-hand thumb. Ang kinakailangan lamang nating maintindihan, paano gamitin itong ating right-hand thumb in pointing, which is the direction of the positive x-axis, the positive y-axis, or the positive z-axis. Actually, meron tayong tatlong orientation on how the directions of the positive x, y, and z-axis can be pointed using the right-hand thumb principle or right-hand thumb rule. Ito yung una. I will show you here the orientation. Makita natin itong isang illustration natin na isang orientation of how you can use your right-hand thumb in pointing the directions of the positive x, y, and z. Makikita natin dito na yung ating hinlalaki ay nakaturo sa ating positive x-axis, yung ating hintuturo ay sa positive y-axis, at yung ating middle finger is pointed towards the positive z-axis. Okay, I will show you here another orientation, and this is how you would have. Okay, ito namang isang orientation makita natin is that the thumb, yung ating hinlalaki, yun naman ang tinuturoan ng ating positive z-axis, while the hintuturo, is pointed towards the positive x, and the middle finger is pointed towards the positive y. And there is another one, which is directed in this manner. Yung ating thumb is directed towards the positive y. This is positive y. Yung ating hintuturo is directed towards the positive z, while this one, the middle finger, is directed towards the positive x. So, paano yung concept na dyan? Actually, meron lang siyang ruling. Kung yung nasa taas mo, ginawa mong x, then the middle, yung kasunod, yun ang y mo, at yung pangatlo, yun ang z mo. Okay? Kung ito ang ginawa mong x, ito yung iyong y, ito yung iyong z. Kung ito yung ginawa mong x, ito yung iyong maging y, ito naman maging z. So, yun yung tatlong orientation na ginamit dito. Kaya, madaling makita. So, balikan ko lang itong orientation na ginamit natin. This is the x-axis. And I believe it is pointed using the second orientation. Yung hintuturo natin is towards the positive x. Yung ating middle finger is in the y. At yung ating hinlalaki is towards the positive z. At yun yung ating orientation. So, if this will be, placed this way, makikita natin yung ating orientation. So in this case, here is our positive x-axis. This is the positive y, while this one is the positive z-axis. Okay? Ang sabi dito, we are required to replace these four forces by a single force that will produce the same effect. Ano ba ang ibig sabihin nito? Pag sinabi natin the same effect, that means the force will cause the same translational and rotational effect. Kung papalitan natin siya ng single force lamang, dapat ang epekto ng single force niyon na ipapalit natin doon sa apat, pareho in terms of translational effect o translational effect at pareho in terms of rotational effect. Makatuwid, yun ang ating magiging guide. When we say translational effect, this can be taken by taking the resultant of all the forces acting on the body. It's just equal to the resultant of all those forces that are acting on the body. If you will be taking the resultant, then that gives you the magnitude of the single force that would cause the same translational effect. While the rotational effect naman can be taken by taking the summation of moment of each force about any axis. Sabihin, when you take the moment of these forces about any axis, then the same single force that will replace the force should have the same rotational effect about the same axis where the moments of these forces are taken. So, the two will now guide us on how we are going to replace these forces by a single force that would have the same effect. So ito rin natin. So that the single force that can replace the force system is the one whose magnitude is the same as the resultant of all those forces acting on the body and placed in a position, ito yung maganda nating maintindihan, it should be placed in a position to cause the same moment effect as the sum of the moments of the individual forces. Dapat mailagay natin yung single force na yon sa isang point that it will create the same turning effect as the effect of all those four forces acting on the body. So how are we going to do that? So actually this can be done in different ways. Meron tayong tinatawag na scalar approach in doing it at meron tayong vectorial approach. So in this particular example, we shall be considering the vectorial approach in dealing with this problem. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's present the solution. Now, we will be solving for the resultant of the force, since the forces acting on the body are parallel and all are directed along the y-axis, then the resultant will just be taken as the summation of all the forces acting in that direction, and that is equal to, the summation of, if we will be taking the direction of the positive y-axis as the positive direction of the force, meaning all those forces that's directed in this direction should be positive, because here is the direction of the positive y-axis. And therefore, you have this 50 shall be directed in the negative direction of the positive y, and therefore that is negative 50. While this one, 500, is in the same direction as the positive, that's why it is positive 50. This one is directed opposite the positive y-axis, therefore that is negative, while this one is directed towards the positive y-axis, therefore that is positive. And all those are directed, having a direction of I. So when we simplify, this becomes positive 350i. Ano nga ibig sabihin itong positive 350i? Ang ibig sabihin ito, yung direction ng R is directed towards the positive y-axis at meron siyang magnitude na 350. Okay? Now, puntahan naman natin yung solution, or let's now solve for the moment of all the forces about O. Okay? Subukan natin alamin, kasi ang sinasabi yan kanina, kung makuha natin ang moment effect ng apat na yan about any particular axis. In this case, we will be using as the axis O, so that we can locate the position of the resultant. Nakuha natin yung resultant. Ang kinakailangan natin, saan dapat natin ilagay, saan dapat mag-aakit ng resultant para kapag pinaltan natin itong apat ng isang resultant gaya itong nakita natin 350, then the effect will be the same. So yun ang target natin. So we solve for the moment of all the forces about O. And how are we going to do it? Okay, when we say the moment of the resultant about O, it will just be equal to the summation of the moment of the individual forces about O. Yung F sub I na tinutukoy dito is defined as the individual forces about the same point O. And this could be taken using the individual moment about the different axes, that is the summation of moment about of all the forces about the x-axis plus the summation of moment of all the forces about the y-axis and the summation of the moment of all the forces about the z-axis. Ito maganda dahil ang lahat ng force na makikita natin nag-aakto sa body ay directed in the y-axis sa makatwid. Wala siyang turning effect about the y. And therefore, this moment summation about y shall be equal to 0. Ba? So ano lang hinahanap natin? It's just taking the moment effect of all those forces about x and the moment effect of all those forces about y. Asan siya? Ipakita natin ito. Yung nakita nating arrow ito, yun yung turning effect. How these four forces are causing the turning effect about the x-axis. And that is, okay, tingnan natin, if we are to follow the right-hand thumb principle, itong direction ng arrow niya, yung kanyang turning effect, will indicate the positive moment that will be caused about the x-axis. And if we will be examining, there will be only two forces that will cause rotation about that. Itong force na ito na makikita natin dito, itong 500 na ito, at itong 200 na ito, wala siyang turning effect kasi it is just passing. They are just passing about that axis and it will not cause any moment. The moment effect will only be due to the 50 and the 300 pound Newton that is acting at this position. Okay, you'll notice that 50 will cause the same effect, the same turning effect as this one, while 300 will be in the opposite direction, so that the 300 will cause a negative moment about the x-axis. So that this will be equal to 50 times 0.35, this being the momentum. Ito nakita nating distance nito. While this one, negative 300 multiplied also with the same moment arm, multiplied by I. All of this will be the moment about the x-axis, and because the axis is directed about the positive x-axis, therefore it will be taken as I. While the moment about the z-axis, here is the z-axis, ito yung z-axis natin, yung vertical axis na yan. How do we define the positive moment? Ang positive moment niya, yung turning effect, in that direction using the right-hand thumb principle. And you will notice also that the 500 and the 300 Newton force here will not cause any moment about the z-axis. The moment will be due to 50 whose momentum is 0.5 and 200 whose momentum is 0.5 also. And they will be causing all in that direction opposite the direction of the positive moment about the z-axis. And therefore that is both negative 50 times 0.5 minus 200 times k multiplied by k, because k is the direction of the axis of rotation of the moment due to 50 and the 200. So that when this will be simplified, the moment of the resultant about O shall be equal to negative 250 times 0.35I minus 250 times 0.5k. Or when we simplify this part, it becomes equal to negative 87.5k I minus 125k. Siguro magandang maintindihan natin, may paliwanag natin, itong resulta ng moment, kasi itong moment na ito ang magbibigay sa atin ng idea kung saan dapat naroon yung ating resultant. Okay? Tingnan natin mabuti. Okay. If you're going to solve for the position of the resultant, ang sabi dito, nakita niyo itong negative moment of 87.5. And we are talking of here of the moment about the moment about x-axis because it is directed in the I direction. Sabihin ito yon. So if it is negative, ang ibig sabihin, the effect of the resultant about the x-axis is to cause a rotation opposite the rotation of this direction. And therefore, we would expect that the position, and because R also is directed in the positive y direction, we would expect that for R to create a negative moment about the x-axis, it should be located above the x-axis. Kaya makikita natin dito, the negative moment about the x-axis indicates that the resultant must be located above the x-axis to produce rotation in the negative direction. Again, I would give emphasis, yung x-axis kasi narito. Ang positive moment about x-axis is directed as shown by this arrow. The direction of the resultant is 350 and directed towards the positive y. The moment produced by the resultant along the x-axis according to our computation is negative, and therefore for R to produce negative moment about the x, sabihin, para mag-produce siya ng moment opposite this direction, it must be located above the x-axis. Ayun yung explanation. Ngayon, similarly, puntahan natin itong other moment. Okay, the negative 125k. Ang ibig sabihin ng k nito, yun yung kanyang axis of rotation, the z-axis. Diba? Take note that in the z-axis, the direction of the positive moment is indicated by this arrow. However, in our computation, the moment that we have is negative. Ibig sabihin, the resultant that is 350 should cause a turning effect opposite this direction. And because the direction of the resultant is directed towards the positive y-axis in this direction, so makatwid, how it should be placed in the plane in order for it to produce moment about the y-axis in the negative direction. Therefore, makikita natin that it should be located somewhere to the right of the z-axis. Diba? So that the negative moment about the z-axis indicates that the resultant must be located to the right of the z-axis to produce rotation in the negative direction. Kaya kung pag-aaralan natin itong lumabas na resultant ng dalawa, ito, negative moment in the I direction and negative moment in the z direction, it follows that the resultant must be located above the x-axis and to the right of the z-axis. Kaya kung ipapakita natin ito, dapat narito somewhere here, yung ating resultant. Ipakita natin na kunwari ito yung point na kung saan dadaan dapat ang resultant. It is located above this x-axis and to the right of the z-axis. Imagine natin that this resultant will be directed in that direction. Yan. Makatuwid itong resultant na yun will produce negative in the x and negative in the z-axis. So hanapin natin, asan ba siya? Kailangan ma-define natin yung kanyang position from the x-axis. We call it as x. And the position from above the y-axis, we call it as z-axis. So makatwid, ang target natin, the coordinate of this point on the plane where R should be placed to produce the same turning effect about O. We mean to find for the coordinates of x and the z. And how are we going to do it? Okay, let us define, if R is directed along this direction, along that point, hence, we know that the moment of R about O using the vector notation that is equal to the cross product of R cross R, where the small r is the position vector of the resultant from the axis of moment, which is at O. And that is equal to, R times xi plus 0j plus zk. At yung R naman natin is directed in the y-axis whose magnitude is 350 and therefore R shall be equal to 350j. So this becomes R cross R. So when we simplify, how do we simplify this cross product multiplication? Let us try to multiply because we know that cross product is distributive. So we can distribute this term inside to all the terms inside this parenthesis. And so that we can have this product, the product of xi times 350 or negative xi times 350. And that gives us negative 350 times I cross j. Kaya meron tayo ditong I cross j. Right? What about this term? The product of 0 and 350j? Of course, that is 0. And what about the product of zk times 350? This becomes, okay, 350 positive 350z times k cross j. Okay, 350z times k cross j. But we know that the cross product of two unit vectors ij, this ij, I cross j, is equal to what? Is equal to k. While the cross product of k cross j is equal to negative I. So when we simplify that equation and then rearrange natin, no? Simplifying and then rearranging, then the moment of R about O becomes, unahin natin itong I, and then we try to multiply that, that becomes negative 350z times I. While this one, k minus 350 times x multiplied by k. So, when we simplify, okay, try to equate the two equations that we just have formed. Equating the two equations, okay, what do we have? We have 350, okay, equating natin itong dalawa ito, and then solving for z, negative 350z times I minus 87.5 times I will cancel, and we shall be able to solve for z is equal to 0.5. Similarly, we can solve for k, for x here, okay, by equating the two, such that you have negative 350xk minus, or shall be equal to negative 125k. K again will cancel, and from here we can solve for x at 0.357. So that we can have a generalization here that the system of forces acting now on this plane can be replaced by a single force whose magnitude is 350 Newton directed towards the positive y-axis and at a point 3.357 to the right of z and 0.25 above the x-axis in order for that resultant to produce the same effect. Guys, sana ay nasundan ninyo yung ating discussion about the determination of the position of the resultant and how the principle was used in that application. I hope, guys, that in my next video presentation you will follow me by again subscribing to my channel so that we shall be together in this discussion. Once again, thank you very much for watching.